Our first guest on Monday's Morning Focus is a familiar voice to many of our listeners. John Conroy is a Clare native, experienced fitness coach, founder of Fitness for Fun, and a long-time GAA coach who's dedicated almost 2 decades to volunteering in Uganda. Through his work in education, health and sports development, John's helped transform lives. He's also the founder of Níle Cusacks GAA club in Uganda, running through his rather impressive CV here. However, following a recent Ebola outbreak, John and his fellow volunteers have made the difficult decision to cancel this summer's planned trip. And John joins us now to discuss that, the ongoing projects being supported, and why his commitment to the people of Uganda remains as strong as ever. Mr. Conroy, how are things?
Good morning, Alan. Welcome back from your holidays.
Thank you very much. I was going to say your holiday plans, although they're not strictly holidays, are thrown in disarray, unfortunately, and a difficult decision to make. Yet we were talking about it off air there a moment ago, John. The only sensible option really to cancel this year's Uganda trip because of the Ebola outbreak. Tell us more about when you first heard about this outbreak, how serious it is, and how events rolled from there.
Yeah, I suppose the Ebola situation's gone on for the last 3 weeks, Alan, and the main epicentre is in the Congo, in the east part of the Congo. So Uganda and the Congo, they're neighbours. Now, we're usually based in Jinja, which is, if we have to drive towards the Congo border, it takes about 13 hours. So we're quite far away. Now, we'll keep a daily update on what's going on there with the locals, and we'll keep a good eye on the figures that they bring out every day. So the latest figures they had was they had 19 cases, they had 3 deaths. But you know, on the outside, doesn't appear too bad. There's 50 million people there. Case numbers are seen quite low. But behind all that, then I was on a call there last week with the Ministry for Health, and she outlined that they hadn't any money for testing kids or personal equipment. So that kind of raised a red flag then, because you haven't got testing kids and if you haven't got money for it, you don't really know the fact on the figures. So it was a very hard decision to make as regards ringing the volunteers, because the volunteers have been fantastic and we've been preparing since before Christmas to pull this trip together. But on health and safety, it was a no-brainer. It was looking out for ourselves, number one, and then our people at home, number two, because we certainly didn't want a situation where we brought back a virus back into our own county and our own country. So that would be hard, very hard for the volunteers, and that was a hard call to make. So on from that then, is there a huge disappointment to the people in Uganda? Now, they've already come through COVID. Middle East war has been a big challenge for them as well, because fuel prices have rocketed since the war has started, and now they got this Ebola as well. Like, it'll be difficult for them in the next while, and I suppose the next few weeks and months. In terms of what help the Ugandans will get will be very important internationally in terms of help, from the outside people. Like, they'll have no subsidies, no government support, wages are low, they'll have little opportunities for other employment opportunities. And
I'm sure, John, they're going to miss out on all you guys going over, which they very much look forward to, not just from the, in terms of the fundraising you do and what that means for what they're able to do over there to better their lives and work in terms of education and sport and so on, but you've all become, very good friends. I'm sure they very much look forward to you all coming. They're going to miss out on that. And you're not the only ones who volunteer there. There'll be other volunteer groups who've been regularly going to Uganda over the years who I'm sure have had to pull their travel plans as well.
Yeah, talking to people who own hotels and accommodation and safari companies, people have pulled left, right and centre. So it will have a very negative effect on the people themselves, like even all the restaurants, accommodation, the supermarkets. People buying gifts, the taxis collecting us, the taxis moving us around to the different sites during the day. And then the partners we work with then, had to ring the hospice then. I only made a decision a few days ago, so it's kind of fresh enough. Had to ring the hospice then and were really disappointed. But they could totally understand and respected our decision. And the other groups then that we deal with are the school. Now, what's going on there at the moment, and this is very important for all our donors out there, all the money that's been collected and raised, that's going to be spent as it was when we started out initially at the start of the year.
Okay, that'll still make its way there.
And that's been used at the moment. So we have 10 teachers' houses under construction. So they began early April, and the houses are been almost built at this stage. So the plastering's done, the electricity work, that's all in at this stage. So the good point there is we don't do any construction, we get local workers to do it. which is helping them improve their skills, and it's also providing an income for them, themselves and their families. And then we have so we got really good news then about 2 weeks ago. St. Cayman's Secondary School in Shannon. Ger Keane is the teacher in Cayman's. Ger's from Kilkee, and Ger was over last year. So Ger saw, I suppose, all the good work that we were doing in that, and himself and Siobhan McSweeney and Cora Gannan and the first and second year students, they raised 4,500 for a number of fundraising events they had within the school, and that's going to pay for toilets and wash facilities and a construction wall around the school, which is huge news. See, all the money, so we're on target with our teachers' houses and the wall and the toilets, and again, even since the war, the construction costs have increased even over the last 2 or 3 months. With the hospice then, again, the patients will lose out, unfortunately, with the interaction from our own volunteers. A number of group activities would have been organised for the time that we're there. It could be therapy, could be doing exercises, it could be doing different interactions with the patients. So the hospice have 4 vehicles going on, and it covers about 13,500 kilometres per month. So the first 5 months in this year, 457 new patients have been enrolled. That's 31% increase from the same period last year. So the demand is increasing for the hospice, and unfortunately with the fuel prices going up, the costs have increased as a result. So again, our fundraising money will go in towards the hospice. So what we're doing with the fundraising money we've raised is going towards the palliative care side of the hospice. And then with the GA club, then Níle Cusacks, that's going from strength to strength. So I would guide so we train 3 times a week. I would guide the coaching sessions each week, and we have about 7 or 8 coaches, teachers and local coaches, and we had plans this year to host the first ever summer cool camp in Africa. So unfortunately that's going to be parked for the time being, but hopefully things will move on.
Still something for them to look forward to. And you guide those, so are you in touch via Zoom, or you're sending over training plans, or how does that work? Training
plans, so I put together a WhatsApp group. I created a YouTube video I would call Níle Cusacks, so about 40 training plans on that, training drills. And every morning I would put up maybe 3 or 4 coaching drills. So the coaches would work off those. They do the training session and they send back the clips in the evening. And I go through the clips and guide them as to how they're doing. And we work from week to week on that. So we've about 80 or 100 kids coming out each afternoon for 3 times a week.
Isn't that brilliant? I mean, to see our national game spreading is fantastic, but to bring such joy into the kids' lives as well is fantastic. And it's good that all that is able to go, but I suppose it'd be different if it was a place where you were travelling every other month. And so this delay would mean that they might have to wait a couple of months before they see all you guys, but the waiting till next year. It is that face-to-face contact and friendship and camaraderie that is going to be most disappointing to them. I'm sure they're relieved and thrilled that all the fundraising and donations are still making their way there, but and particularly for your volunteers who will never have been. It's people like yourself, you've gone there nearly 20 years. The people probably was going to be their first time, a big trip, very much looking forward to it, and rolling up their sleeves and getting stuck in and meeting new people. Yeah, and I must really commend the volunteers, because we've 9 coming and 8 is the first trip. So Michelle McNamara is from East Clare. Michelle would have been previously over. All the other 8, it was their first trip, and to make that call was really hard. And I must say they've been fantastic, because they've had a number of fundraising events. And even when I said, look, if we can't go for health and safety, they had a number of more fundraising events going on, and said we're going to keep going, because the people now are going to need our help more than ever before. Teresa Reynolds is one of our volunteers. Teresa has is hosting a dance in the West County on Friday evening from 9 to 11 with Dave Lawler and Michael Cahill. So if anyone is out there is into getting in a bit of exercise and a few tunes and run a few dances, off you go. And we had Cora then. Everybody in town knows Cora McNulty. Cora's had a number of fundraising events, and the Bearfield community have been fantastic. The Innes Parish and Father Tom Ryan have been really supportive of what we're doing with it. Cora organised a coffee morning in Hassels and Bearfield last Saturday morning, raising €1,700. And then we have Maria O'Loughlin as one of our other volunteers. Maria's hosting a coffee morning Friday morning as well. And Michelle Mack had another fundraising event in East Clare in May Bank Holiday, got a couple of thousand off that as well. So the fundraising all across the county from so many volunteers has been huge, so it has. You've been going for the better part of 2 decades, John. Can you remind people, how did you get involved in all of this, and what was it that you found so compelling about that very first trip that ensured you've been going back every year since.
Well, Frank and Patricia Hassett were two retired GPs from town. They set up the hospice in about 2007. And Patricia said to me one morning, she said, if you've ever any interest, you can come over. So I came over and I started getting involved, doing a few exercises with patients, and then we'll go over each year then during my annual leave time. And it just built up over years. And then 2017, 2018, I remember Catherine Ryan. Catherine works in the Clare Sports Partnership. Catherine said she'd love to go over. Suddenly there was 7 or 8 more people. And then it just built from there. Every year then volunteers would say, I'd like to go over, and they'd come over. So we pay all our own costs, and it just built from there then.
And I mean, there's people you must know nearly 20 years over there.
Oh yes,
you've probably seen like kids become young adults.
Yeah, it's just like it's another community. And I suppose the respect and the admiration that Uganda people have for Ireland is huge. You know, all the help we give them, they really, really appreciate that. And I suppose the important point as well, Alan, is when COVID happened with a lot of the charities in the third world countries, not a lot, but a certain amount never came back because they couldn't come back with due to lack of funding. And it was a huge letdown for the people because you build up their hopes and inspirations, and next thing you're gone. And it's something I probably emphasised to the people on the other side in Uganda, that we are there, we will support them, and we will guide them. And nothing lasts forever. You know, this will pass in time. And hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. So we just keep an eye on things as they develop outside.
And generally speaking, I mean, in terms of Ebola, what do you know about when there is an outbreak? How long it can tend to last? When is the kind of worst over?
This is the first time that I couldn't have gone because of Ebola. There was an outbreak about 2022, but it didn't last that very long. I suppose the biggest thing with this, Alan, it's in its early stages, so we don't know the level of where it is or what it's at, and that's really it. Like, so I can't really say. So
those statistics you mentioned earlier on in terms of deaths and other cases, whilst quite low in a population of that size, there's no telling to what where those numbers could be in a week or two.
No, we don't, and I suppose even because people could be sick and they could be ill and they may die, but there will never be a known reason for that. And because people live in really remote areas, people having access to hospitals and the basic facilities that we have, so that figure, I doubt that's very, very, very correct.
And you mentioning earlier on that they don't actually have the funds to be able to test. How concerned are you about that if they don't have the funds to test, they don't have, I guess, the funds to look after people or to be able to give them any sort of significant treatment if they're showing early signs of Ebola? They're kind of left swimming without a life raft.
That's really it. They're, I suppose, with how the world has changed, they're in a lot of ways the forgotten people, really. There's one man I'm friendly with, he runs the accommodation where we are, so I kind of would listen to him and his advice, and he was saying that he got a bad flu, bad virus. He said he got very weak and all that, and he said that certainly passed around. So what that is, they don't know. And we're not going to find out what it is either by going over. So it's some strain of some virus. So they're still in the early stages and working out what it is. Now the people will say everybody is living as normal. There's no restrictions. Everybody's moving around. People are still gathering in groups, and some of the airlines have cut some of the flights coming in as well. So that would be another concern as well. Yeah,
as you said earlier on, you couldn't risk yourself, the volunteers, but also B, bringing back anything.
No,
and the ripple effect that could emerge.
Yeah. And the only way we could go would be if there was no case months for a month or something like that. We'd need a good amount of clearance before we could head over.
Presumably, John, you'll be staying, I'm sure, maybe throughout the year. You're regularly in contact, and obviously through the Níle Cusacks, you clearly are on the sporting front, but maybe you'll be even more in touch with them, just kind of keeping a watching brief on how things are, and I suppose keeping the fingers and toes crossed that everyone in the community you help in Jinja emerges from this relatively unscathed.
Yeah, so it's an everyday contact I have. So the construction of the teacher's house, that's every day. So a report is sent back every day as regards the progress and the update on the construction of that. And then it would be contact with the principal, but every second day. And then with the coaches, then that's 3 or 4 times a week as well. So the guidance and support is important for those people, that we haven't forgotten and we're still here.
I suppose, going as long as you have been, for this to be the first cancelled trip, that's a pretty good rate. That nothing has cropped up before. I mean, even during COVID, were you able to go? Or
yeah, there was probably 2 years in COVID when I couldn't go, but that applied to everybody then anyway. So there was nothing new. So yeah, no, and the law of averages, not doing too bad.
I would imagine the people who signed up for this year are going to be chomping at the bit for 2027. I don't think there's going to be any dropouts between now and then.
Yeah, hopefully they'll keep up their enthusiasm and look, at time goes by quickly. In a year doesn't go around that slow.
Yeah, very, very true. I suppose, what are the biggest priorities for you for the coming months? You mentioned the daily reports you're getting. Obviously, with Níle Cusacks, you'll be continuing to watch their training develop and progress. What other aspects will you be watching over?
I suppose really to hold our ground, and solidify what we're doing. And because one of the things that we would have earmarked in as well is we would have an official opening of the teacher's house and the toilets and the wash facilities. That would have been due about kind of when the volunteers there somewhere around the end of July, and we would have been was just in the early stages actually of doing it. I was sending an invite to the Irish ambassador to come and host the official opening, and please God that'll still happen, Alan, that we get the ambassador based in Kampala to come out and do that opening. And again, just keep supporting hospice and keep spirits up then with the coaches and the football club.
Just finally, John, if there's one message you'd like the Morning Focus listeners to take away about Uganda, the people there, the projects you support, what would it be, and how can they kind of keep abreast of all of that?
Yeah, we're fairly active on social media. All our volunteers are brilliant in spreading the news. And just massive thanks to all the donors in terms of the support they've given us financially, and something else as well which has been really important. We've had a number of knitting groups throughout the county, knitted items for children, and they were due to go to the hospice. So we've bags and bags of those. We can't get them out yet, but we will get them out when things do change.
Knitting clubs. Is there anything this man isn't across to try and help the people of Uganda? Brilliant stuff, and it's great to just that there's so many people in Clare who go that extra mile to try and help out as well. That's something you've touched on over the years with us as well, John, just the generosity that's out there amongst the Clare public.
It's massive. We hear so much negative news out there, and turn on the radio and turn on the TV, and we've some idiot leaders out there, and all the goodness and all the kindness of people we meet every day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, keep turning on the radio though to Clare FM, and particularly between 9 and midday. I hear it's quality stuff, including having guests like John Conroy. John, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alan. Thank you
very much. John Conroy with us on Morning Focus.